All right. Well, we want to pivot now and talk about the markets. As I mentioned, the NASDAQ has flipped into the red. So all three major indices right now are in the red. I want to have this market conversation now with Amanda Agati, Chief Investment Strategist at PNC Financial Services. So, Amanda, before we get to that market conversation, I do want to ask you about something that we've been chatting about quite a bit here on Yahoo Finance, and that is cryptocurrencies. We've seen Bitcoin at least clawing back from some of its lows from over the weekend. It dropped below 32,000. Was that a buying opportunity? Was that missed now that we see Bitcoin back at 38,000? How should investors be thinking about cryptocurrency in terms of their portfolios?
Well, it is a doozy of a first question. Thank you so much for asking. We have a ton of thoughts on cryptocurrency and the industry at large. Well, I'm not going to give you a buy recommendation per se. I'll definitely give you some thoughts on what we think is happening here. There's no question that the cryptocurrency space really is a collection of the most volatile assets on the planet. And so clearly what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, or even the last few days in particular, in terms of corrections, is not at all unheard of, and it's not extreme relative to what we've seen historically. Cryptos go through boom and bust cycles, perhaps faster and more rapidly than other asset classes or asset types. But this comes with the territory to be an investor in crypto. And so do we think this is the end of the cycle? Absolutely not. We really think what drove the volatility more recently was a bit more of a perfect storm of negativity, a ton of job owning, a ton of negative talk on Twitter in particular, dare I say Elon's involvement, dare I say Tesla. You know, these are big issues that have a lot of potential to swing markets necessarily on headlines and sentiment, not necessarily on the underlying fundamentals. We've had a huge bout of that recently. We saw some negative press out of China. And then if you just look at the technical backdrop, most major coins really did swing into fairly overbought territory. And so not at all surprising to see some of these negative catalysts swing technicals back in the other direction. So I don't want to necessarily say it's a buying opportunity. I think what I'm giving you is some color around price action or price reaction, but this definitely comes with the territory. At the end of the day, we're not as focused on the coins themselves as the underlying use cases. That's really where we think there's a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity yet to come.
So am I hearing blockchain there, Amanda? Am I hearing sort of the companies that are sprouting because of these coins that you're investing in? Because I'm curious if PNC Financial Services is holding any of these cryptocurrencies right now.
Well, again, I'm not going to comment necessarily on what the enterprise is doing as it relates to cryptos, but we are very interested in the entire ecosystem that is cryptocurrency. So from the coins to the use cases and everything in between. And of course, the blockchain technology underpins, this concept entirely. And what I think is really interesting about it is this innovation story. Really, if you think about the last cycle pre-COVID, we had to some degree an innovation drought. That may sound like an extreme statement. There were certainly pockets of innovation, but we really didn't see broad-based innovation to drive meaningful productivity enhancements over the course of the cycle. This is kind of one of the newest areas of innovation. And so when you think about blockchain technology, it is the platform that potentially can support and develop the birth of businesses or industries that we can't even necessarily fathom today. It's very similar to Web 2.0 and the advent of Uber and Lyft when 4G technology came into the equation. This is kind of the next iteration of that. And so we really think there's a lot of potential opportunity and innovation yet to come. And some of the major crypto projects are very, very early stage, only a couple of years into the making, whereas the coins in and of themselves have been around much longer. So I'm sure that folks on Twitter will be like, this is not an early stage thing. But if you think about some of these use cases, it's still very much in an incubation stage and a really interesting long runway for growth ahead.
Amanda, we have about a minute left, so I do want to ask you about some of the market action that we're seeing today, but that we've been seeing recently, this seesawing, it seems, between growth and value. It's a conversation and a debate that we've been frequently having on this show. Curious to know how you think investors right now should really be balancing out their portfolios, especially when it comes to that exposure to that growth in those big tech names that we have been seeing rotation in and out and in and out of just over the last several weeks.
Well, I think the lack of direction that we're starting to see in the market, that is who's going to be in the leadership position, is really a function of the backdrop. We continue to believe that a high volatility regime is going to dominate the market and, frankly, the economic backdrop here in 2021 and even into 2022. And so this choppiness that we're seeing more recently, this churning underneath the surface of the market, I think is very much reflective of that. Try as we might to have a calm and peaceful and relaxing summer, I don't think we're going to get it, because I think the market is really craving what that next big catalyst is to keep this market rally fueled. And we just aren't really seeing it on the policy front. That high ultra accommodation in terms of policy support may actually be starting to wane a bit here. And so I think at the end of the day, in the absence of other policy-driven support beams or catalysts, the market is reverting back to what do the underlying fundamentals tell us. And it's not an across the board all as well necessarily in terms of the fundamentals. So we still think the growth-oriented side of the trade has the chops to justify these elevated valuations, and will keep forging ahead over the course of this year.
All right, Amanda Agati, Chief Investment Strategist at PNC Financial. Great to see you as always.